Hello, all that are participating. This is Dr. Demery with Dr. Sarah Wyatt, and we are your growth mindset, changing your academic mindset host. We are really strong in helping students trying to find a way to really change their perspective. Changing our perspective is really important, especially when we're feeling like the pressure of when we're dealing with situations that are beyond our control. Sometimes that happens without our even giving permission to ourselves to have that loss of control, but it happens, and we need to know how to deal with those uneasy moments of when we're on unrest. Unrest happens. So it's anxiety, it's maybe getting sweaty palms. It's all those things that build up when we are dealing with stresses of being inside the academic world. Okay, so I'm going to go over some slides with you. All right. And what we'll cover is learning what growth mindset means and how to foster it, along with the learning techniques to overcome that math anxiety, but general anxiety as well. Learning strategies to combat test anxiety and improve testing skills. So behaviors are all just natural occurrences of events that occur within our structures. We're going to learn tools that can help us deal with those situations that are uncomfortable. Now, I know you've been through education before. It's not like this is your first rodeo. All right. You've heard of things like before coming to class, you should, examine the course syllabus, get a study partner, schedule your time. Things like that before class is very, very important in that you start to create a strategy set. And that's a really good important thing, what I just said. You're creating strategies. I mean, when we talk about learning things like in math, it's just like anything else. It's a foreign language at times. When you're first learning something, anything is a foreign language. But math itself is like learning language. Okay, you're learning the rules of what variables mean, what any constants, so you're learning what those words mean. So you got to really beforehand get to have the right kind of frame of mind going into it. And then after class, of course, you have, you want to be diligent about completing your homework. Do not cram for tests. Meet with your instructor. These are strategies that we're offering, all right, that we really not offering, but also practicing, all right, to ourselves. We want to make sure we're doing these things, these practices while we're doing this. Okay, so we are really coming up with ways to deal with those stressful moments. Now, it's about your mindset. Okay, when you are dealing with a stressful moment, when you're having that moment of, okay, doubt, this is a subject that I'm not good at, or I don't feel comfortable with learning this material. It's about how you give yourself mercy. And you know what? You take your mindset and you try to conform your behaviors to the mindset or desirable outcomes of what you wish to get out of it. And you help support your experiences. All right. Those behaviors that you have help you have a better experience. Some of the behaviors you have that's uncontrollable affect your experiences in a negative way as well. But then your experiences impact your mindset again. And it's like a cycle of experience, mindset, behavior. So you are in control of your story. All right. But if you feel like you're out of control, there are again tools that you can use to help you have a better experience. Okay. So the mindset is the belief about yourself. It's all about your basic quality of contributions. So you think about your talents and beliefs and your intelligence, and you try to make sure that they align to what your outcomes are, what your goals are, what do you want to get out of things. If you have a negative connotation about anything that you're going into, it's going to affect the way you put forth the effort. All right, there are 5 pillars of a growth mindset. Okay, and we're going to look at that today. So what is a mindset? Okay, there's 2 different types of mindsets. There's the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The growth mindset believes that you can embrace challenges But whatever challenges are coming at you, you can really get through them no matter what they are. You can persevere when there's setbacks, when you fail a test. You can go ahead and deem effort as the path to mastery instead of your ability. All right. And then you can learn from criticism as well as learn from get inspired by others' successes. So these are things that can influence you. And the 5 pillars of growth mindset that I just went over are going to help you have that grit and that perseverance to get through those moments. All right. The way you talk to yourself, those are important internal voices that are going to shape your experiences. Like I said earlier, the mindset controls the behavior that controls your experience. So you want to go ahead and make sure that you are keeping these entities, these 5 pillars, on a healthy practice. Whereas somebody with a fixed mindset will come into a class and say, there's no way I'm going to learn this material. It's way beyond me. It's too hard. Even though there's instructors before you that said that you were qualified to enter in it, you still have that self-doubt and that disbelief, and you just don't believe that you can do it. So you have doubtful tendencies. And then that's what then increases your anxiety and the emission of all your effort. You're going to give up easily. You're going to throw your laptop. You're going to get angry. The emotions are getting the better of you. You have to learn how to deal with those situations. So these are the characteristics of the growth mindset that I just went over. All right. It's been developed by Carol Dweck, a psychologist from Stanford. She has identified what people who demonstrate fixed mindset looks like. They avoid challenges. They give up easily when there's obstacles or barriers in front of them. And barriers it doesn't have to be like a setback in a test. It could be things like when there's a catastrophic event in your life that could impact you. And so you're just like, oh, something happened negative to me. I'm going to go ahead and give up, and I'm going to throw my dreams to the wayside. You're not fighting for it. All right. You see effort as fruitless because it's all about your ability with a fixed mindset. I either know it or I don't know it. I'm not good at math or I'm good at math. Those who are good at math, they should be the ones who stay in math classes. I'm going to get out. Right. Effort, however, is absolutely the way you should think about when you're going into a situation that's difficult, because effort, that's what I'm strong at. My effort is going to get me through it. I have 2 children. One has a fixed mindset. One has a growth mindset. The one with the growth mindset is the one who's going to UCF, and the other one is still in my and still in his bedroom playing video games because they're not believing in themselves enough to break free of their mindset. Okay, so when you have a fixed mindset, you're ignoring useful feedback because you feel that feedback is an attack against you. Like if I was to give a test and I go ahead and tell a student, oh, this is where you had an issue with your strategies, mathematical strategies, you're going to get frustrated and angry and just dismiss it and then think you're no good at math, for example. All right. You find it's threatening when others around you are succeeding because you think, oh, they're better than I am. I am not going to be able to amount to much when I'm dealing with these people who are so much better than I am. So rather than that, if you can get away from a fixed mindset, you move towards a growth mindset, you can see others' successes as a model for your success. You're inspired by others' successes. You use their energy, you use their example as something that can influence you to give you the tools necessary to be successful. Now, in neuroscience, okay, neuroplasticity or plasticity is a way of looking at your brain growing. So we're going to look at this short video on what is neuroplasticity.
Neuroscience is a biological science that is concerned with the function of the brain and the nervous system. For many years, scientists thought that the brain was fixed and couldn't adapt or change after childhood. But advances in fMRI scanning have shown that this could not be further from the truth. We can now see that our brains change and adapt every day, regardless of our age. Every time we learn something new, we're harnessing the power of neuroplasticity. Neuroscientists believe we have over 100 billion neurons in our brain, each capable of connecting to tens of thousands of others. Neurons are the building blocks of the brain, and each one can make trillions of connections every second. When we learn a new skill or think about something differently, we begin to make new connections between neurons. Every time we practice a new skill, think in a certain way, or feel a specific emotion, those related connections are then strengthened, and it becomes easier for our brains to follow this pathway. If we keep using this pathway, our brains begin to adapt, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The less we use our old pathways, the weaker that pathway becomes. It's this ability to make new connections that has enabled scientists to coin it.
Hey, I can hear, but if you can't hear, you might want to check to make sure your volume is up on your laptop or desktop that you're using, because sometimes you mute the volume.
Yes, thank you. I was going to address the question and then it just jumped off the screen. But yeah, thank you, Dr. Wyatt.
Scientists believe we have over 100 skill or think about something differently, we begin to make new connections between neurons. Every time we practice a new skill, think in a certain way, or feel a specific emotion, those related connections are then strengthened, and it becomes easier for our brains to follow this pathway. If we keep using this pathway, our brains begin to adapt, and this new way of thinking, feeling, or doing becomes second nature. The less we use our old pathways, the weaker that pathway becomes. It's this ability to make new connections that has enabled scientists to coin the term neuroplasticity, meaning our brains are pliable and plastic and can grow, adapt, and change. When we apply the neuroscience of learning with how the brain works, we can modify 4 variables to maximize the retainment of knowledge. These can be summarized as AGES: attention, generation, emotion, and spacing. Attention. For us to be able to learn something, we need to pay attention to it. If we can't minimize distractions, then we can't focus on the learning and we won't remember it. Generation. This is where we encourage the learner to generate meaningful connections and associations with what they already know or a skill they already have. Help the learner to make those connections to previous learning and the wider context, and this includes the learner reflecting on their own learning process. Emotion. If we can attach emotion to the learning and help to motivate the learner with the rewards that they're going to gain from it, or challenge them to get out of their comfort zone, they're much more likely to remember the information later on. Spacing. Spacing out the learning over time and using repetition and retrieval instead of chunking it into one big block will strengthen the learning and help to move it from short-term memory to long-term memory. With the trend for more courses moving towards endpoint assessment, this skill will be key in the achievement and success of our learners.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned about the volume, because I hope that you were able to really understand the importance of what was just described as far as the behaviors of successful learning. That's what the strategies that we want to make sure we exercise, right? Now, I'm going to let Dr. Wyatt take it from here for a little while.
Yes. So, two things I need in the chat here. I don't see this, and maybe I've just mislooked it. But I need you to write your first and last name. So, like, I would write like Sarah Wyatt, and then your instructor. So, if Dr. Demaree was my instructor, put a little hyphen, and then Dr. Demaree. I don't see that in the chat from everyone, but I want that information because we're going to forward that to the other math instructors, and that's how, if you're getting extra credit, you can quickly get extra credit for attending this event. So if you are interested and like, you're trying to get extra credit. I know it was mentioned at the beginning, but please just put your name, full name, and hyphen instructor, and then we'll send that over to the math instructors. Now, we're going to talk, because we are both math instructors, we're going to discuss the math anxiety component of this. So, math anxiety, it's really interesting because with all of the fixed mindset and growth mindset discussion, math anxiety fits really well in that context. So, math anxiety is defined as a negative emotional response to math. And the most important thing about this is that math anxiety is a learned response, and thus it can be unlearned. So, they always say, like, there's no math anxious babies that are born. It is a learned response that happens through the educational system. And it might happen at different points throughout your academic career. It might have happened in fourth grade that you learned this response. It might have happened in 11th grade, or maybe even in college now. But the important thing is, because it is a learned response, that it's not something that's innate to us, we can unlearn it, and we can unlearn it through positive experiences when learning math. And of course, this growth mindset discussion and not feelings, but talking and just having that mindset is going to contribute to positive experiences. But math anxiety, oftentimes people who suffer from it feel very incapable of doing math activities, even though they're perfectly capable of doing them. And this results in almost like a fear of math, surrounded to math classes or just working on math problems. And it's important to remember that math anxiety is very much an emotional problem, not an intellectual problem. But because, like, you have this mindset of, I I'm not good at math, I've had these negative experiences, this emotional issue can oftentimes become an intellectual problem when you display certain characteristics that we're going to talk about that are often very central to math anxiety. So, in terms of what professor's name to write, you would want to look on Blackboard and see next to your math class, it probably has on the syllabus or even on the Blackboard class, it will say what professor you have. Okay. Um, so we're going to flip and look at the causes of math anxiety. So as I mentioned, it is a learned response. It is not something that you are born with. It's something that's innate. And what research has shown is that oftentimes math anxiety is the result of negative or embarrassing experiences with math, specifically in the math classroom often. So the examples that are given, like, if you raise your hand and you ask a question that you're really wondering about, and the teacher maybe doesn't respond in the best manner, that might result in a negative or an embarrassing experience. Or maybe you get a low test grade and that results in a negative experience surrounded to math. So there's usually like a trigger or an experience that people can pinpoint back to, as kind of a cause for the beginning of the math anxiety. But again, this can oftentimes result in poor performance, kind of continuing to confirm the self fulfilling prophecy of, I'm not good at math, I'm not going to be able to do this and complete this math course type of thing. So on the next slide here, we're going to, if Dr. Demery can go over there, we are going to talk about some of the symptoms of math anxiety. And I think it's really important to remember that there's two things going on here. So there's like the physical symptoms that you have, so the physiological symptoms, and those symptoms can be things such as like a rapid heart rate, where you literally feel like your heart is beating out of your chest. You could have sweating, you could have muscle tension. I know when I had a lot of academic anxiety, like I would have so much tension in my shoulders and in my jaw, especially. You have like very muscle tension. You don't feel relaxed. You have an upset tummy, or you're literally shaking as you take a test. So the question is, how do you deal with those physical symptoms? Because obviously, if you're sitting there and you feel like your heart's beating out of your chest, you're not going to be able to focus too well on the actual test questions. So in the bubble there on the left, you'll see some of the kind of the top 4 things that are recommended for dealing with these physical symptoms of math anxiety. So the first is to try to have a relaxed baseline as much as possible before going into these kind of anxiety provoking situations. And a lot of times, what is recommended is deep breathing exercises. And there's lots of research. You can Google lots of different deep breathing exercises and so on. But the key thing is you want to slow down your breath. And a lot of times, what people recommend is that your exhale when you are, letting out the air is longer than your inhale. So sometimes they'll say, like, breathe in for 4 counts, like count to 4 as you breathe in. And then when you exhale, don't just quickly exhale, but take a long exhale of 8 counts. And that inhaling and then exhaling, where the exhale is longer, will oftentimes slow down your breath and then make you kind of feel a more relaxed state. So, deep breathing is oftentimes one of the key ways that you can quietly, in any setting, deal with these physical symptoms that you experience related to the anxiety, specifically math anxiety. There's also research that says, like, having a regular cardio, like taking a walk, the cardio um, activity does help to kind of reduce anxiety. And then there was also research by Amy Cuddy about power poses. And that research has been somewhat brought into question, but it is sometimes it really helps. Like, personally, it really helps me to do this. But what her research said is that a lot of times when people are anxious, their shoulders are going to round, like, you're trying to protect yourself. So kind of get hunched over. And her research said that you needed to just kind of open up your shoulders and like make a victory V, or put your hands on your hips. Basically, anything that would kind of open up your shoulders so that you're not kind of crunched in, shrunk down. And she has a lot of information about how, like, like going to I know this sounds silly, but like going to like a bathroom stall and making your victory V, or putting your hands on your hips. Her research showed that that would decrease the cortisol, so the stress hormone, and increase testosterone. So those are some examples. But the deep breathing, especially, is something that you can do in the classroom very quietly. Personally, nobody's going to know what you're doing, but it can really help you to get in a more relaxed state. So then we deal with the psychological component of math anxiety. And I think this list in yellow is really interesting because I know myself, like, I have had these characteristics and I didn't even realize like that it was anxiety. I just thought that it was, who I was, or like that I didn't study enough type of thing. So one of the symptoms of math anxiety, if you look at that third one, is that your mind goes blank. So sometimes students will come up to me and they're like, I studied all of this time for the test. I get the test and then my mind just completely goes blank and I can't remember anything. That could potentially be a symptom of math anxiety. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, so if you feel like, no matter how much you want to get started, you feel like you can't get started, that is sometimes a symptom of math anxiety, where you just feel overwhelmed and you start procrastinating to avoid these negative math related feelings that you have. So, procrastination, feeling overwhelmed, those could potentially just be anxiety manifesting itself. So, the ways that we can deal with the psychological component, first and foremost, is just being aware of this. So, again, as I mentioned, I know there was definitely times in my life where I wasn't even aware that my overwhelmed feelings were anxiety, right? But being aware of it and just be like, oh, that's me being anxious, and I can keep going on and keep moving forward, that can really help. So, being aware of, okay, this is a symptom of it. And then the biggest thing is that growth mindset. So, going back to what Dr. Demeray put in the Dropbox there's lots of really good information on that PDF that goes into so much detail about growth mindset, statements that you can make to yourself, things that you can do to kind of switch your thinking from a fixed mindset to a more growth mindset. And just be confident in the effort that you put in. So, no, and again, Dr. Demery mentioned, like, his effort's going to carry him through this. most math classes, that is true. Like if you put in the effort, if you do the review problems, if you do the homework, you're going to see the result of that. So we always recommend a growth mindset, but of course, that growth mindset has to be coupled, it has to be combined with effort and work for learning the material and moving forward with the math class. So on the next slide here, we're going to talk a little bit more about math anxiety and kind of the growth mindset part of it and the statements that you can make to yourself. And again, what Dr. Demaray has in the Dropbox, there's lots of more resources there related to it. But just to kind of touch on some of the different kind of statements that you can change. And on the left hand side, you see kind of like the fixed mindset. So if you're saying to yourself, I give up, I'm not going to get this ever, or, I can't make it any better, this is too hard, I made a mistake, all of these things. And the one that I love is my friend can do it. So I have so many students that are always comparing themselves to somebody else and like, oh, well, this person got a better grade than I did. That's a fixed mindset. We need to switch over to a growth mindset. And so for a growth mindset, kind of take a look at that list and just ask yourself, like, what would be helpful to tell yourself? So when you look at the instead of, think about, okay, well, what do I oftentimes tell myself? So the thing that I tell myself is like, it's not good enough, right? And you could switch over. I could try to switch over and just be like, okay, maybe I can try a different strategy, or maybe this will take some time. And those statements can be what I replace my, okay, I made a mistake, I'm horrible, I can't do this type of thing, replace it with something on that right hand side. So those are some really great ways to foster this growth mindset, is that right hand column and just trying to pick out one or two things that you will maybe put it on a post-it note or write it on your binder or something, to just constantly remind yourself that you're trying to think a different way, and this is the way that you're trying to think instead of old patterns and thought processes that you might have had. So on the next slide here, you are going to see the power of yet. So this yet is a really great word to add to any sentence that you say to yourself. So there is a difference between not knowing and not knowing yet. So what they recommend, you'll see this in our math classrooms, the power of yet. Like, if you say, I'm not good at math, just add the word yet to it and say, okay, I'm not good at math yet, and I'm learning how to be good at math, type of thing. And then if you say, like, I can't do this, add yet. I can't do this yet. So we highly recommend that because you want to be future focused. You don't want to be thinking about the past. You don't want to be thinking about, in fourth grade, you had this horrible math experience, or this horrible, math teacher last semester, even. You want to think about, okay, I can do this, and I'm not good at it right now, but I'm going to get good at it through practice and repetition, type of thing. So when you're starting to kind of switch over from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, sometimes these statements can feel like a little too much to say. So if you flip over to the next slide here, Dr. Demaray, you're going to see like the statement is, my ability to do math is improving. And you might not really feel that way. Like you might not feel like my ability to do math is improving, but you can add this little phrase of, I am open to the possibility that one day my ability to do math is improving, right? So you don't have to believe it right now today, but you can be open to the possibility that you might be able to relax while doing math, or you might be open to the possibility that you'll allow yourself to remain comfortable and calm and confident while doing math problems. So if you're there where you can say, I'm truly capable and competent to do math, say it. But if you're not quite there, add the phrase of, I'm open to the possibility, because you will get there. And if what you think is possible usually does happen. So you want to kind of define what you're thinking as possible, rather than focusing on previous things and that fixed mindset that you might have experienced. So of course, you can have these phrases that you tell yourself, and they can be very, very, very powerful, right? So telling yourself that, I'm going to learn this and I'm open to this possibility that I'm going to, my ability is going to improve in math, that can be very helpful. But we also need concrete ways that we can set ourselves up to be successful during class and also during test. And so to finish up our presentation today in these next 20 minutes or so, Dr. Demery is going to go through and discuss just concrete things that you can do, strategies that you can do to pair with this growth mindset that will really be a winning combination for a successful semester.
That was amazing, Dr. Wyatt. Great job. I love that. Now, like Dr. Wyatt was talking about strategies, right? And I've kind of alluded to strategies as well. Now, not every strategy is ideal for any one particular person. I mean, you have a battery of strategies that you can select from that really define who you are, as long as you're open to it, right? So most things we can't control. For example, arriving on time all the time, because sometimes maybe the parking lot was loaded, right? Or there was a car accident. But you're attempting to try to keep on a good, solid schedule. I like that word. You're trying to attempt to a solid schedule and try to pick a good seat when you're coming into a classroom, setting yourself up for success and based off of your needs as well. If you're having a hard time hearing or seeing, then perhaps sitting in the back would not be the most ideal place, right? So if you feel like you're one person who needs to use the restroom often and don't want to interrupt the class, maybe perhaps the back would be the most ideal. So pick a good seat that works for you, right? And then come prepared. What does coming prepared mean is trying to take advantage of making sure you get ahead of your homework. I know when I went into my math class, for example, I already knew the material before I went into the classroom. And so because I went through all the homework before, I got the homework done before I got the class. So when the instructor was giving me that instruction, I already understood what was coming at me. And if they could offer me something a little different, then it could change my ideal of what it is that I just learned. So staying focused, sometimes that's hard. Sometimes we need new techniques with maybe clearing our mind. That breathing exercise, sometimes a distraction is necessary to stay focused, because sometimes we tend to, if we especially are feeling a little bit anxious or whatever, maybe bored, the content isn't our ideal learning, our minds go somewhere else. So perhaps thinking, using some ways of trying to deal with your mental is important, to try to calm it down and just try to go back to the moment, being present in the moment. Participate and asking questions as needed is important. Always feel like you can trust the instructor. The instructor's not going to bite your head off. Now, there is negative connotation from years past when I was in 4th grade. I got beat up by my teacher because they asked me a question and said that was a stupid question. There's no such thing as that. Okay, you need to go ahead and wipe your mind of that bad experience and change your behavior now to redefine your new experiences. Taking notes, there's many different ways that instructors are providing notes right now. There's either PowerPoints or these guided notes. However your instructor gives you material, try to take advantage of those. But by all means, whatever videos that you're watching, you want to take and actually be responsible for your own set of notes. There are many different types of note styles. There's like Carnell's note-taking strategies. There are other ways that you can use, but make sure that it's purposeful and it's meaningful and it talks to you, and its ownership is by your own hand, because transfer of information comes from effort, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So take good solid notes and be positive, about your experiences. Have a good outlook on life. Always think about it as a deepening experiences. We talked about neuroplasticity, about the growth of the brain. And if anything, people always think, oh, well, why do I need to learn math? Well, you need to learn math because, and then you can finish that statement for yourself, but you can look at it as I'm growing my brain. I mean, that's just the simplest way. It doesn't matter if I'm using the material or not. I'm making these new neuron connections, and it's growing my brain. I'm getting stronger. I'm going to use these different experiences for other applications in my life later on in my life. So we can really take and change the way we look at things rather than being negative about it. Now, outside, how to set yourself up for success outside the class. Setting a plan and time management is critical. I can't emphasize enough about this, about uh, practicing procrastination is horrendous. Now, if you're the type of student who can't manage your time, you're going to always be under that crunch time thing. In that video we watched on neuroplasticity, we talked about spacing on ages. We talked about spacing out knowledge. We want to make sure that we're not cramming everything in one shot. Why it's important to continue to work on our understanding of material on a spacing regiment. Okay. Checking Blackboard is important, but schedule of activities is the most important. All right. Rivermail, yes, but announcements, I would say, even is critical here. But anything that can keep you organized, get a calendar, write down things on a calendar, and make sure, okay, you're giving yourself enough time to understand that content. And if there is a troubled area of understanding, then you want to maybe highlight it, get into highlighters. Maybe highlight it with a red marker or something, saying, oh, this is something I need to come back to. And then, or I need to visit the instructor about. Those are strategies. All right. So keeping purpose to the assignments. All right. You want to make sure the assignments are always in your mind, and that you're purposeful about those assignments. Continuously practice the material. Do not procrastinate. Okay. So those are just big things that just hurt us when we're attempting to understand the material, and then we cram everything at the last minute. It's like we're not really understanding it. And yes, that's where our minds also go blank. It's because we didn't transfer information from short term to long term, and you're busting your butt studying all this stuff, but you didn't make the effort throughout the entire session. You tried to cram it, and it all was lost because you didn't transfer over to long-term memory. And then yes, your mind goes blank. So because when you're under stress, you're putting your brain under a lot of tension, and those like weak connections that you made are going to snap under a lot of pressure. If you've built your experiences over a span of time, those connections are going to be a lot stronger, and even under stress of the test, it will not snap and you'll remember the material. Those are just the way the brain works. So and make sure you get help. The tutoring center and the ASC lab is very critical for getting that assistance when you are stuck. On exams, you want to make sure during the test, you want to stay relaxed. Don't bring that you can. That's going to be immediate. That's going to be like, okay, I can remember this. This is important. I want to make sure I record it before the test overwhelms me. Skipping problems is a good one. All right, skipping problems, it doesn't overwhelm you because you want to lower that anxiety. All right, make sure you read those directions. All right, so go back and review the test and let your hard work pay off because you've done the work necessary to understand and do everything you had. All right, and I've already talked about some of these other strategies for preparing for the test, like do not cram. Okay, see problems and make sure that they, if you're struggling with them, you get the necessary focus, attention that you need on these things. So all these I've already kind of went over. All right, take control of your anxiety. Now I have I've given you guys in the Dropbox several times. I've put this here, a PowerPoint for growth mindset. There are lots and lots and lots of material there for things like how to address stress. For example, music, okay, has a profound effect. All right, let me just pause this for a second. I want to come over to the growth mindset. So this is given to you in the Dropbox. So please come over, make sure you use this. But I just wanted to focus in on some of them. They are really important. I want to, oh, by the way, each of these are videos, really motivational videos on increasing your beliefs. So when we talk about increasing your, I guess that lowering the anxiety, but really focusing in on what makes you who you are. These powerful videos, I played them many, many times, and they really do get you excited about learning. It gets you excited about growing. So these are important elements, okay? But one thing I wanted to show you is sometimes when we're struggling with things, all right, we need really just, oh, by the way, this video right here is amazing. Denzel Washington, perfect video. He'll talk about some great strategies about falling forward. All these are motivational videos that are so empowering. But one element that I want you to focus in on is the power of music. And this is the start of it, but inspirational songs. But, Miley Cyrus, The Climb is so awesome. I mean, I just feel so lifted when I'm like listening to these kinds of songs. And then Josh Groban, You Are Loved. Sometimes we need to hear these messages. And it's very, very powerful. There's also just what I call the power of music. Music can have a great effect on us, on what happens to us. These are all links, by the way. All these are. And these music pieces I listen to every time I'm doing work. Every time I'm working, I give you guys these as a powerful collection of music. And yes, I even like to listen to Christmas music when it's in July. Okay, maybe I'm just sentimental like that. I love the Christmas season because it's about sharing and about being connected with each other. And so I'm brought to that state of mind. So these are powerful, just instrumentals. They're not words or anything like that, but it lets you feel one with nature. There's one that's just, it talks about spiritual reset, but it's just powerful music. And I wanted to share that with you. There's so many great things in this presentation, and I give it to you as a PDF document that you can click on any one of those and it will link you to those instruments. Okay, so now back to here. Let me go ahead and come back to here. All right, we have this. Okay, so after the exam, okay, you learn from your mistakes. Do not feel like criticism is bad. I mean, criticism helps you grow. That's one of the pillars of a growth mindset is learning from criticism. And we want to learn from our mistakes. Never judge yourself based off of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to survive this test. This is the end of me. I know personally, I offer my students the ability to take their final and replace their lowest test grade. That's not me personally, all right? Because I believe that students do have a moment of weakness and they can fall, but they can learn from their mistakes and they can grow from their mistakes and have a way of recovering those points back, which is great, all right? Now, 10 ways of reducing math anxiety. I've already gone over one significant one is to overcome your negative self-talk. That's how that growth mindset messaging system is going to help you replace that negative talk. What we talked about earlier, I can learn this, but not, I mean, I can't do it yet. I could get there, but I just, I need more time. I mean, so those kinds of things will help us motivate ourselves to be able to get further along with a positive mindset. So consider math as a foreign language. I often say consider it as a big puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, okay? And you're putting the pieces all together. So don't rely on memorization to study mathematics because it's all about practicing good habits. It's not studying or it's not practicing for perfection. There's no such thing, okay? Use available resources such as the videos that your instructors provide for you, all the different resources that are available like PowerPoints and things like that. And also, this one I love, number 6, is studying according to your learning style. Now, learning style, I'm a person who needs to listen with a lot of music, or study when I'm with a lot of music, and I need to be inspired by the things that are going around me. I can't have absolute silence. That's just not my learning style. It drives me nuts. I'm inside my own head too often. But that's just me, of course. Now, you got to find what works for you, all right? And when you are stuck, get the help the same day. Reach out, find out, especially use those resources like, for example, the ASC lab. I know personally I offer my students extra credit for using such things because I know that they don't need the extra credit if they're doing those things because they're going to be doing what's needed to be successful. All right. Stay relaxed and talk mathematically to to those around you. That's where the buddy system works. We talked about that a little earlier about how buddies, you need to have a friend. And by talking mathematically, it really does emphasize how to think mathematically. All right. And be responsible. All right. Don't think that, it's your teacher that's the reason for your failure. Be responsible for your own successes as well as be responsible for your failures. Don't push your fault on somebody else. All right. We all have a tendency to want to avoid, looking in the mirror sometimes, but we have to just be honest with ourselves. And these are the resources that you're going to think. Now, we no longer have smart thinking, but we do have something else called Brain Fusion that's out there. But Brain Fusion is replacing smart thinking. But the ASC Lab, now called the Tutoring Center, but that's going to be useful. Your instructors are your primary resource, though. Use them to your advantage, okay? But talk to your advisors and using Blackboard. And obviously, if you're going through something that's beyond just the anxiety, and that's like life is happening kind of moment, please use the Health and Wellness Center. We do have another resource for students for if you're going through mental distress, and that's Baycare. Baycare is an online resource for our students for mental health reasons. Okay, so if you're dealing with a lot of things like family conflicts, relationship conflicts, things that are beyond the classroom, that you need help, because those things are going to impact your successes, because they are just they're just barriers that you need to overcome those in order to be successful. We are here to serve you. All right, this right here is a great resource. These are some of the references that we have. Not necessary for me to go over, but free resources, of course, is your instructor, the ASC Lab, and that Brain Fusion now. Okay, and so we have different resources that really can help you be prepared for the success of this semester. At this time, we're entertaining any questions you may have. Oh, that's a great one. Okay, so the question is, I'm more of a kinesthetic learner, which is a touchy-feely. You need to work with things. But tests are often text. I know what you mean, text heavy. How do I go about test anxiety in situations where our learning style is to be challenged? Okay, so you know what? In that case, perhaps, all right, you may want to discuss with your instructor an alternative testing testing environment. However, I know that in some cases, this is going back when, that I would go ahead and have my students up on a board, and because that kinesthetic is moving up on the board going vertically. I had done that once or twice because of this right here, because they needed to do the movement process. They didn't want to be just on their desk. So that is one option, but that's not available to everybody, because we really are focused in on everybody as a whole. So what I would say is have a conversation with your instructor to see what options there are for you in your challenging situation, and see what strategies they offer to you. That's the best advice I have for that particular situation. Does that help a little bit? Because I know as far as the kinesthetic learning, there's other alternatives like doing skits and things like that. Project-based learning is available. I've done that in the past, but that was a while back. Just to avoid just all text-based, I went ahead and had people do presentations, PowerPoint presentations, some kind of I had somebody do an acting. They did an acting sometimes, but that's hard with math. But it was interesting, the conversations that I had with that student. But I don't know if Dr. Wyatt, you had anything else to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think, like, a lot of times you can't change like the testing situation that you have, but I think like when you're studying, if you can stand up and move around, that can really help. Like I know like sometimes like when I would study, like I would, take a walk and like listen to things, or I would, like have my little index cards and flip through them. And I think that movement really helps lower anxiety. And I also think it kind of gets more of your body involved with the studying that you're doing and the learning that you are doing. So I highly recommend that. I know a lot of times, like in our academic settings, like instructors really don't have a lot of freedom to change the testing strategy, but I think you personally always have the ability to, when you're studying, to not make it very passive, like don't sit down type of thing, just kind of stand up, working through things and moving, I think can really help with it. But that might be bad advice, but that's my 2 cents on it. And then you also wrote in the chat that these freezes seem more so as giving up than challenging myself in any way. Um, so it might come off as negative, but what I would say about that is if it seems like it's coming off as negative, maybe don't pick that out as your statement that you want to refer back to, right? So, like, and not every statement is going to fix or necessarily be something that you want to pursue, right? So you just need to kind of find the statement of encouragement that works for you, that you can believe in and feel, uplifted by and continue on with, rather than whatever, if you're thinking a negative statement. Dr. Demery, do you have anything more to add to that?
No,
Because I do
absolutely.
understand that comment. I really
Yeah,
do.
I do not understand because sometimes we're given advice and it's like I can't resonate with that particular information. But I love what you said. Not everything. This isn't a cookie cutter situation where everything will fit each person. So I love what you just said, and I would agree that you got to pick out what works for you. And I think, like for me, my learning style isn't the same as another, right? Because I'm a person who needs to hear a lot of things, and but that doesn't work for everybody. So you got to figure out what works for you. And I love what you just said, Dr. Wyatt. And I mean, now the important thing is for Chanel, is that something you can probably get out of it? I mean, is that something that's helping you there? I mean, I'm not sure if we are answering your question right. No worries, no worries. I definitely want to thank everybody for joining us in this session. This session is being recorded and will be shared. All right, it will be shared once it's recorded and it's rendered. I'll go ahead and share it. I will put it, I ask that you go ahead and complete the survey that's at the end of the River Life session. So please be sure to complete that. That's going to help us with improving our experiences for the next set of students. So thank you. I hope that you enjoy the resources that's been provided. And thank you so much for coming.